Importing an animation file into 3ds Max will reconstruct the Rocket League scene using dummy objects and proxy meshes. From there, you can create advanced effects that you can render out to a video layer for compositing, or you can use the reconstructed scene to create fully animated cinematics. When importing a new animation, it's best to start with an empty scene. You can import into an existing project, but the behavior of that is untested, so be wary and make sure you have a backup of your project before you import. To run the script, go up to Scripting, Run Script. It's already here, but to get here, go to Quick Access if you set this in the intro, Cinematics Buddy, Plugins, 3ds Max, and then run Cinematics Buddy Max Script. Click Choose File to select the file you want to import. On the left, you can click these text boxes to choose the object types that you want to import. I recommend leaving all of them checked. The camera name is automatically pulled from the animation file's header, but you can override it here. So I'm going to do my camera. Once everything looks correct, click Confirm to let the script begin the import process. Depending on the length of the animation and the number of cars captured during the animation, it could take a while to import. If it looks like it is frozen, just give it time to finish. In the selected viewport, you can press C to go to the camera view. I also usually press Ctrl F and set it to shaded so that I can better see how things are framed up. Then I usually press play or scrub through the timeline to make sure the animation imported correctly. You can also import and synchronize additional cameras as long as their animations are from the same segment of a replay and were captured at the same playback speed as the original camera. Run the script again and choose the next file to sync. This is that second POV that I recorded in the exporting tutorial. Notice how ball and cars are unchecked and unavailable. Since a Cinematics Buddy scene already exists, this prevents duplicate cars and a duplicate ball from being generated, or accidentally overriding the existing cars. Make sure the rest of the setup looks good again, then click Confirm. The new camera should do its best to sync up with the existing scene, but sometimes that might not work. If it doesn't sync up properly, you can select that new camera, go to the Modifier tab, and use the Sync Shift modifier to shift it forward or back in time. So for example, I'm going to shift it by half a second. And now you can see that the camera is half a second behind. You can apply a shift multiple times until it looks right. You can also use Ctrl Z to undo them. For effect compositing, you generally want to keep the geometry in the viewport, but you don't want it to show up in a render. To do that, go up here to the Selection Type dropdown, choose Geometry, press Ctrl A to select everything, right-click, Object Properties, and uncheck Renderable. Then whatever effects that you create will be the only objects rendered in the scene. Optionally, while you have all the geometry selected, you can choose Freeze and uncheck Show Frozen in Gray, so that you don't accidentally keep clicking the geometry while you're working. Now with the scene set up, you can create whatever effects you want, render them out as a transparent image sequence, and composite that sequence onto your footage. As a quick example of using the units that we converted in the exporting tutorial, I'm going to place a sphere right at this location. So first I'll create a sphere, press W to switch to the transform mode, and then I'll copy these values in. And there it is. That's the location that the camera was at when I used the Convert Units command. Depending on your needs, you might want to try exporting this animation to a different program, like Cinema 4D for After Effects. Please note that this method isn't really tested and is very likely different per program, so again, your mileage may vary with this. First, if you had frozen the geometry, choose Unfreeze All. Change the selection mode to All. Select everything. Go to Export, Export Selected, and choose the location you want to export to. I recommend saving it as an FBX file, because that's the only file type that I've tested with before, so I can't really recommend a different method from experience. Here are the options that you'll need to have checked. Make sure animation is checked, bake animation, cameras, and depending on your program, you'll want Z up or Y up. For most programs, you'll probably want Y up. Click OK to export it, and then in whatever program you use, just import that file. This next part will likely only work inside 3ds Max. Unfortunately, due to the way that the parameters will be wired, it has a very slim chance of exporting to another program. For fully rendered cinematics, you'll want to swap out the proxy unrigged mesh with a rigged mesh. The easiest way is by writing a rigging script. There's one provided with Cinematics Buddy, which you can make a copy of and modify. I'll explain the modification a little bit later. The example script works by selecting the mesh of the car that you want to replace, not the dummy. With the mesh selected, run the example script. That is in the rigging scripts folder. The script will delete the selected mesh and import the new mesh. Notice how the original mesh is all in one piece, and the new mesh that has been imported is split into body, wheels, and different suspension rods. The animation controllers of these dummy objects are parameter wired to the controllers of the original dummy parent object, which you can see here. The new rig also wires up the boost parameters, which will create a particle system for standard boost. You can change the density of this boost by going to the boost data modifier and changing its value. So if I wanted less boost for better performance, I would change it to 50. Go to the end to let the boost particles cache, and then I can play through at better performance. You can make your own configuration of the rigging script. To do that, make a copy of the example one. You don't want to edit the original, because if there's ever a plugin update, your changes will be overwritten. I'll rename this to My Rig, and then in 3ds Max you can go to Scripting, Max Script Editor, and open the file. The script is filled with comments that explain what each part does in case you want to edit the functionality. However, there's this data struct at the top that in most cases should be all you need to edit. The assets that I use are in a path relative to the location of this script, hence the first two lines. Car file is the name, including the extension, of the file that contains the mesh of the car body. This is where that file is. And this is what the file looks like. Notice here we have imported car name, which matches the name of the body itself. And then I have different names for the suspensions. The full list can be seen here. The way I have it set up is that it first uses the car name, followed by suspension upper or suspension lower, followed by front or back, and then followed by left or right. Using these different pieces of the names, I'm able to reconstruct the full name later in the script. Also note the pivot points of these suspension rods. It probably isn't too important to have them at the rotation point, but it can be helpful. The wheel file is basically the same. You specify the name of the file, and then you specify the name of the wheel that's within that file. For each car body that you rig up, you're going to want to specify a few locations. To find these locations, I put a sphere at the location that I'm assuming it will be. Then I press S to snap it into place. And then I look at the location value. So we've got 52.5 roughly, 27, and then 5.5. So that is the front wheel location. Since the car is symmetric, I only need to specify the left side. Everything will be copied over to the right side in the script. I also did the same for the suspension locations, as you can see here. You should also specify where a boost emitter's location is. For the octane, I specified it right in the middle of the back here. Since the octane has two emitters, I set B is double emitter to true. If you have a single emitter, you'll just want to place it right in the middle and set this to false. Again, once it's set up, it's as easy as selecting the mesh, running the script, and then it's rigged with boost, suspension, and wheel rotation. That's all for the 3ds Max stuff that's specific to Cinematics Buddy. If you want to learn more about how to make special effects in 3ds Max, watch some other tutorials online, or talk with the other members of the Rocket League editing community.